All right, back again for another deep dive. Looks like we're going deep on the war in Ukraine.
Especially the tensions between President Trump and President Zelensky.
Okay, yeah, this is going to be good. So where do we even start with this? What's the main source of friction between these two?
Well, a lot of it seems to be coming from President Trump being frustrated with
Right.
Zelensky's reluctance to, engage in these peace negotiations.
Hmm.
You can actually see it pretty clearly in that clip from President Trump's speech at CPAC.
CPAC, wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big stage to be airing those grievances.
He doesn't hold back at all. He emphasizes, over and over the human cost of this war, all the soldiers dying, thousands every single week. And he argues that all that fighting has achieved very little, like in terms of actually gaining territory.
So what, he's saying Zelensky needs to be more, pragmatic?
Yeah, more willing to compromise.
Okay, to try and stop all this bloodshed.
Exactly.
So is that all just frustration with Zelensky not taking opportunities?
There's a bit more to it than that.
Okay.
There's also some disagreements about Ukraine's natural resources.
Oh, right. They've got a lot of valuable stuff over there. What, like minerals?
Minerals, exactly. Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, he actually confirmed in one of the press briefings that the U.S. Treasury Secretary went to Ukraine.
Recently?
Yeah, recently, to offer them a deal.
What kind of deal?
It involves, America co-investing in those resources.
Okay, so a good deal for Ukraine, presumably.
They even mentioned specifically an aluminum foundry that if they were able to restore it,
okay,
it could potentially supply all of America's aluminum imports.
For how long?
For like a year.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean...
So what's Zelensky's problem with that?
Well, if you go by what President Trump is saying, it seems like Zelensky's not too keen on giving up control of those resources.
Even if it means, revitalizing their economy and strengthening ties with the U.S.
Yeah, President Trump's making it out to be like a lack of pragmatism. He's just not seeing the long-term benefits
right.
for his country.
But there's also the whole issue of accountability for the U.S. aid that's already been sent, right?
Right.
I remember that coming up in one of the press briefings.
Yeah, that's another major point of tension.
So what's going on with that?
Well, President Trump has straight up questioned where it's all going.
Publicly.
He's even saying that Zelensky himself admitted he doesn't even know where half of it went. And then at that press conference at Mar-a-Lago, he brought up concerns about corruption within the Ukrainian government. And he even went so far as to compare it to those Doge investigations going on here.
Okay, yeah, the Doge investigations. Okay, we'll have to dig into those a little bit later. But let's stick with Ukraine for now.
Yeah.
Anything else fueling the tension?
One more thing. President Trump seems to think that Zelensky is, kind of out of touch with the Ukrainian people.
How so?
Well, he's pointing to Zelensky's approval rating,
Which is
absolutely tanked, like 4%, dismal. And he's saying that, basically the Ukrainian people have lost faith in him as a leader.
okay, and he's using that to justify pushing for new elections.
Exactly. He's saying that they deserve a leader that can represent them. Someone who can end the war, who's willing to negotiate, make the tough decisions.
Wow. So we've got a war that's dragging on. U.S.-Ukraine relations are going downhill.
Yeah.
And now President Trump is openly calling for, regime change in Kyiv. This is a powder keg.
Before we jump to conclusions, there's another layer to this whole story.
Okay.
President Trump is also really focused on Europe.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's saying that they need to take more responsibility for the conflict. He's specifically calling out the NATO allies, especially in Europe.
Okay, so what exactly is he asking of Europe?
Well, in one of the press briefings, Mike Waltz was talking about how these European nations need to contribute more financially and to actually supporting Ukraine.
Militarily.
Yeah, militarily. And he said that President Trump is insisting that they meet their NATO spending commitment.
That 2% of GDP.
That 2%, yeah.
He's been on them about that.
He has throughout his presidency, really. And now he seems to be using Ukraine.
As leverage.
As leverage, yeah.
To get them to finally pony up.
Pretty much, yeah.
So he's basically saying, hey, Europe, you're closer to this mess than we are, and you've benefited from American security guarantees for decades. It's time to, step up.
Share the responsibility.
Share the responsibility, exactly. So this push for burden sharing, it's tied to his frustrations with Zelensky.
Yeah, he seems to be implying that if Europe were doing more, Zelensky would be under less pressure and more open to negotiations.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
Yeah.
We've got the war itself. We've got this strained relationship between President Trump and Zelensky, and this push for Europe to step up.
Right.
And now we need to dig into these Doge investigations.
Yes.
And see how they tie into all of this.
It adds a whole other dimension.
Really?
Yeah, it's wild. We're talking government waste and fraud on a scale that is it's truly mind-boggling.
And it sounds like those findings are making a lot of people nervous.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially those who were in charge when this was all happening.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly did they uncover?
Well, one of the most shocking things is with the Social Security Administration.
Okay.
Doge found data that, it looks like they've been sending Social Security payments to people who are over 200 years old.
Wait, I know.
200 years old.
That's what the data is showing.
That can't be right. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. President Trump, during that Mar-a-Lago press conference, he was listing all these expenditures. Things like, millions of dollars for circumcisions in Mozambique.
What?
I know. And youth enterprise training in Cambodia. I mean, it sounds like a joke, right?
Yeah.
But he was serious.
So no one knows where all this money's going.
That's the thing. That's what's so troubling. President Trump keeps asking, where's the money? And no one seems to have an answer.
And he's really upset by this.
He's furious. He sees it as a betrayal, of the American people.
And Doge is the solution.
It seems like it, yeah. It's his weapon of choice in this whole drain the swamp thing. He wants to make the government more accountable, and it's working.
Really? How so?
Well, the head of Social Security, Shell King, resigned right after Doge started looking into their data.
That's quite the coincidence.
Yeah, a lot of people in Washington are getting very nervous.
For good reason, it sounds like. So is Doge really a sustainable solution, though? Can it really fix Washington?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, it's certainly shaken things up, exposed a lot of waste, probably a lot of fraud. But whether it can lead to actual change?
What are some of the potential pitfalls here?
Well, for starters, Doge really relies on Elon Musk being involved. Yeah. I mean, he's essentially a volunteer. And he's a busy guy. What if he loses interest? What if he decides to focus on something else?
So Doge loses momentum.
He loses momentum, loses funding, loses, public support.
Okay, so that's one thing. What else?
Well, there's also the government pushback. I mean, we've already seen some resistance from these bureaucrats who aren't happy. They're not happy about Doge looking at their budgets and their authority.
Right, so as Doge digs deeper,
the pushback's just going to get worse.
This could get ugly.
It could.
So President Trump and Doge versus the so-called deep state?
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. And if it comes to that, well, it'll be a battle for the ages.
It's crazy to think about how much money we're talking about here. Millions for circumcisions in Mozambique and youth training in Cambodia. I mean, it almost sounds like a joke.
It does, doesn't it? But the implications are serious. And the fact that this has gone on for so long, I mean, it's really alarming.
Yeah, you can tell that President Trump is using these Doge discoveries to push for more transparency, more accountability in the government. He wants everyone to see where their money's going.
And he's not afraid of stepping on some toes.
He's picked a powerful tool to do it. Doge with Elon Musk. This has the potential to change things in a way we haven't seen before.
It's a fascinating partnership. This president and this tech visionary, they're really shaking up Washington, shining a light on all the dark corners of government spending. It's making a lot of people very uncomfortable.
But Doge is not just about uncovering this waste and fraud. It's about giving people the power to demand better. Remember that presidential memorandum, the one about requiring all government agencies to make their savings public?
Radical transparency. It's a bold move. It could really shift the power dynamic, between the government and the people.
So they're basically turning citizens into watchdogs.
Exactly. They're giving them the information they need to hold their officials accountable to ask, where's the money going?
That's a powerful idea. Everyone tracking how their tax dollars are used. Waste and fraud are exposed. People in charge are held responsible for what they're doing.
A government that actually works for the people and not the other way around.
Can Doge actually live up to all this? Can it overcome the pushback?
That is the question, isn't it? I mean, we're already seeing resistance. People unhappy about their budgets being scrutinized and their authority being challenged. And as Doge goes further,
This is going to get worse.
yeah, probably.
Could this become a showdown then
Yeah.
between President Trump and this deep state?
Oh, it's definitely a possibility. And if that happens, well, it would be quite the clash. I mean, President Trump wants to cut waste, make the government more accountable, but
The system is not going to change easily.
it's not. It's good at defending itself, resisting any kind of change.
David and Goliath.
It is. It is. This president who wants to shake things up
Right.
versus this massive bureaucracy and this battle, I mean, it could have huge consequences.
Oh, so.
Well, if Doge is successful, it could inspire similar things in other countries.
Really?
Yeah, movements for transparency, for accountability.
A new era of government reform even.
Exactly. But if it fails, if it's crushed by the system or fades away, I mean, it could scare people.
Scare people off from ever trying to challenge things.
Yeah. So high stakes, very high stakes.
And we're just at the beginning.
We are. It feels like we're at a pivotal moment, honestly. You know, these decisions that are being made right now, they're going to shape things for a long time for all of us.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah, where do we go? What do we do?
As, informed citizens, can we make a difference?
That's what we're all trying to figure out, right? I mean, this deep dive, it's shown us some things that are hard to look at. This waste, this fraud, this lack of accountability. But we've also seen the power of, technology. We've seen how people can come together to push for change.
And we have a choice to make here, don't we?
We do. We can accept things as they are, or we can demand better. We can push for accountability, support these initiatives like Doge, work to build a system that actually responds to the people.
Our future really is in our hands, isn't it?
It is.
It feels like we're at a turning point here. We've uncovered all this ways, seen the tension with Trump and Zelensky, but can things really change? Can Doge really fix the government?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, there's no doubt that Doge has made a big impact, right? Shining a light on how the government works, but lasting change, that's tough.
Yeah. So how do we even start to figure this out? What are the biggest challenges for Doge?
Well, one of the biggest ones, like we said before, is that it relies so much on Elon Musk.
Right.
He's the one driving this whole thing. But he's got a lot on his plate. What happens if, his attention goes somewhere else, if his priorities change?
It would be bad for Doge, wouldn't it?
It would. It could lose momentum, funding, support.
Okay, so that's one problem.
Well, there's the bureaucracy itself. We've already seen them pushing back, right? They're not happy about their budgets being looked at, their authority being questioned.
So as Doge keeps digging,
it's just going to get worse.
This could get pretty nasty.
It could.
President Trump and Doge up against the deep state.
Yeah, that's a real possibility.
But if it happens,
it'll be a huge fight.
So it's like they're fighting a hydra. Cut off one head, two more grow back.
That's a good way to put it.
And then you've got the political opposition too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The Democrats are going to jump all over this. They'll say it's reckless, a threat to the government, that it's going to destroy social programs.
They'll say it's a populist attack on the entire government.
Exactly. So Doge is facing a really tough fight.
On a lot of fronts.
Yeah. It needs the public to be behind it. It needs money, and it needs to find a way to beat both the bureaucracy and the other politicians.
So that's a lot to ask. But let's say just for a minute, the Doge actually does all of that. It shows everyone the true cost of the government, and people demand better. What happens then?
That's when things get really interesting. Imagine if government budgets were totally transparent, every dollar tracked.
Wow.
People could see exactly where their money's going. They could report waste and fraud immediately.
Well, that would change everything. No more hiding, no more secrets in the budget.
Right. And with that transparency, the power shifts. People get more involved, they know more, they have more say in what happens.
So it's a more active democracy. The government works with the people, not the other way around.
Exactly. But it's not just about holding the government accountable. It's about us as a society figuring out what's important. What are we willing to pay for? What kind of future do we want?
Doge could start a much bigger conversation about the role of government, about individual freedom versus responsibility, about what we stand for as a nation.
That's a conversation we really need to have. And Doge, even with all its problems, might be what starts it.
It's a long shot, but the reward is huge. A better government, people having more say, a fairer society.
Those are things worth fighting for.
Absolutely. If Doge can make even a little bit of that happen, it'll have been worth it. And on that note, we'll leave you to think about this. What other systems, what other things that we take for granted could we re-examine in this new light? Subscribe to our podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We're here to make things clear. New episodes every day.